What happens when prejudice files a flight plan? In the pressurized cabin of Summit Airlines Flight 112, high above the Atlantic, a whisper becomes a confrontation. A decorated flight attendant, Susan Miller, sees a black woman in seat 1A and decides she doesn't belong. She calls security, intending to humiliate and remove her. But Susan makes one critical error. She has no idea who this woman is, and she has no idea who is flying the plane. What happens next isn't just a twist. It's a nosedive into hard, inescapable karma. Stick around. The hum of Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport was a familiar kind of chaos. It was the sound of separation and reunion, of stressed-out sprints to Concourse E, and the slow, shuffling dread of a security line. For Dr. Evelyn Hayes, it was just white noise. Evelyn was a woman who moved with purpose. As one of the country's leading pediatric cardiac surgeons, her life was a symphony of precision. Today, however, that precision felt frayed. She was on her way to London's Great Ormond Street Hospital to perform a groundbreaking, high-risk arterial switch on an 8-year-old boy named Leo. The boy's case was complex, a mirror image of a rare condition she had written the literal textbook on. The pressure was immense. She hadn't slept well in a week. She had treated herself to this ticket. First class, seat 1A. It wasn't about the champagne. It was about the lie-flat bed. She needed to be rested, her hands steady, her mind sharp. She wore a simple but elegant navy blue knit dress and a cream-colored blazer from Lafayette 148. Her luggage, a sleek Toomey roller, glided silently behind her. Boarding for Summit Airlines. Flight 112 to Heathrow had just begun. She walked past the Sky Priority sign, her digital boarding pass illuminating her face on her phone screen. "Welcome," the gate agent said, scanning it with a beep. "Enjoy your flight, Dr. Hayes." "Thank you," Evelyn smiled, a small, tired smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She stepped onto the jet bridge, the scent of filtered air and jet fuel instantly transporting her. She entered the cabin and turned left into the quiet, hushed sanctuary of the first-class pod. Seat 1A was perfect, a private suite with its own door. She stowed her carry-on, took out her noise-cancelling headphones, a medical journal, and a bottle of water. As she slid into the wide, plush seat, she finally allowed herself to exhale. She closed her eyes for just a moment, visualizing the first incision, the bypass, the delicate suturing. "Can I help you?" The voice was sharp, not welcoming. Evelyn opened her eyes. A flight attendant stood in the aisle, arms crossed. Her name tag read Susan. She was a woman in her late 50s, her blonde hair pulled back in a severe regulation bun. Her smile was a thin, stretched line that looked more like a grimace. "I'm sorry," Evelyn said. "This is the first-class cabin," Susan said, her voice dripping with a sickly sweet condescension. "Your seat must be further back." Evelyn felt the familiar, weary prickle. It was the same prickle she felt when a patient's family member asked her, "When will the real doctor be here?" "My seat is 1A," Evelyn said politely, holding up her phone, the boarding pass still displayed. Susan didn't look at the phone. Her eyes raked over Evelyn, from her natural hair, pulled back in elegant twists, to her simple, unflashy dress. The assessment was swift and condemning. "Doesn't belong." "I'm sure there's been a mistake," Susan said, her plastic smile tightening. "Economy boarding hasn't started yet. If you'll just step back into the boarding area, we can get this sorted out." "There is no mistake," Evelyn said, her voice remaining level, though a cold knot was forming in her stomach. "This is my seat. 1A. Susan let out an exaggerated sigh. "Ma'am, we have high-priority passengers who have paid a great deal of money for these seats. I can't have you just sitting here. Now please, show me your printed boarding pass. I don't have a printed pass. The digital one is right here. Evelyn held the phone out again. Susan leaned in, her perfume, a cloying scent of stale gardenias, washing over Evelyn. She squinted at the screen. This scanner, Susan said, tapping her own manifest device, says this seat is still unboarded. Now I'm going to ask you one more time to move. The few other passengers already seated, a man in a suit in 2B, a young couple in 3A and 3B, were now watching. The man in 2B, a Mr. Henderson, let out an audible, impatient huff. This is my seat, Evelyn said, her politeness hardening into a quiet, steel resolve. I am Dr. Evelyn Hayes. I am not moving. If your scanner is incorrect, that is an issue for you to resolve. Not me. Susan's face, which had been a mask of false politeness, dropped. The thin smile vanished, replaced by a sneer. I see, she said. So you're going to be difficult. She turned on her heel and marched to the galley phone. This is Susan, the purser. Yes, I need airport security at the gate for Flight 112. I have a passenger in 1A who is non-compliant and refusing to show a valid ticket. She's causing a disturbance. Evelyn's blood ran cold. A disturbance? She was sitting, quietly. But Susan had used the magic words. Non-compliant. Security. She had just escalated this from a microaggression to a full-blown confrontation, and she had done it with a terrifying, practiced ease. Evelyn looked out the window, her heart hammering against her ribs. She thought of Leo, the 8-year-old boy in London. She had to be on this plane, but she would not, could not, be bullied out of a seat she had earned, a seat she had paid for, simply because this woman could not fathom a black woman belonging there. The waiting began. Susan Miller felt a grim, righteous satisfaction as she hung up the phone. She had been with Summit Airlines for 28 years. She'd started back when flying was glamorous, when the uniforms were designed by fashion icons and the passengers were refined. Now, it was all this. Susan lived in a small, garden-level apartment in College Park, the rumble of landing gear a constant, rattling reminder of the life she felt she deserved but had never achieved. She was a senior purser, yes, but that was her ceiling. She'd been passed over for a cabin management position twice, once for a man 15 years her junior, and the second time for a woman, a Latina, who Susan felt lacked the polish for the role. Her life was a series of small, accumulating debts and large, festering resentments. And when she saw this woman, this Dr. Evelyn Hayes, as she claimed, sitting in 1A, it felt like a personal affront. It was the casual, unearned confidence that angered her. The expensive but understated dress, the lack of gaudy jewelry. It was a kind of wealth Susan didn't understand, and therefore deeply distrusted. In her mind, the woman was probably using a stolen credit card, or perhaps she was the girlfriend of some athlete given a pass she didn't deserve. Doctor. Susan scoffed internally. Right. David, a junior flight attendant working the business class cabin, poked his head through the curtain. He was in his early 20s, and his eyes were wide with alarm. Susan, what's going on? That woman— Mind your station, David, Susan snapped. I am handling a situation. This woman has a fraudulent ticket and is refusing to move. Security is on the way. Fraudulent? David whispered, glancing at Evelyn, who was now sitting stiffly, staring straight ahead. But I thought I saw her scan her pass at the gate. You thought wrong, Susan said, her voice a low hiss. She's a disruptor. We have a protocol for this. You'd do well to learn it. Now go. Offer Mr. Henderson in 2B a pre-departure beverage. He looks agitated. But, now David, David scurried away, his face pale. Susan smoothed her apron, her public smile slotting back into place, and walked back to Evelyn. "Ma'am," she said, her voice loud enough for the entire cabin to hear. "I have given you a chance to deplane peacefully. Airport security will be here momentarily. If you are removed, it will be a federal offense, and you will not be flying today. I can assure you of that." Evelyn finally turned her head and looked directly at Susan. Her gaze was not fearful. It was analytical, cold, and assessing, as if she were diagnosing a particularly nasty tumor. "And I can assure you," Evelyn said, her voice dangerously quiet, "that you are making the biggest mistake of your career. I paid $6,400 for this seat on my own American Express card 3 weeks ago. I am on my way to perform a life-saving surgery on a child. I am not being disruptive. I am sitting. You are the one creating a scene, and you are doing it, quite obviously, because I am a black woman." The accusation hung in the air, sharp and undeniable. Mr. Henderson in 2B groaned. "Oh, for God's sake, here we go. Just move to another seat. I have a meeting in London." A young woman in the first row of business class, Chloe, had been watching the entire exchange. She had her phone resting on her lap, angled perfectly. The red record button had been on for 2 full minutes. Susan's face flushed a deep, mottled red. The direct accusation had broken her composure. "How dare you! This has nothing to do with your race. It has to do with your ticket. You people are always so quick to pull that card." "You people." Evelyn flinched, as if slapped. That was it. The mask was completely off. This was no longer a misunderstanding. It was a targeted attack. "So that's what this is," Evelyn said, her voice shaking slightly, not with fear, but with a profound, seismic anger. "You are a hateful woman, and you will not win. We'll see about that," Susan spat. Just then, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed on the jet bridge. 2 uniformed officers from the Atlanta Police Department's airport unit appeared at the open doorway. Officer Chen and Officer Bryant. "This is her," Susan said, pointing a perfectly manicured, trembling finger at Evelyn. "Seat 1A. She needs to come off." The arrival of the police shifted the atmosphere from tense to critical. The air in the first-class cabin felt thick, unbreathable. Other passengers, who had been hiding behind newspapers and phone screens, were now openly staring. Officer Bryant, the taller of the two, stepped into the aisle. He was a broad man, and his presence, with the radio on his shoulder crackling, seemed to take up all the remaining oxygen. "Good morning, ma'am," he said, his voice polite but firm. He wasn't smiling. "My name is Officer Bryant. We've had a report that you're refusing to leave the aircraft." Evelyn took a slow, deep breath, forcing her surgeon's calm to take over. She would not cry. She would not yell. She would be the professional she was. "Good morning, officer," she said, her voice steady. "That report is false. I am a ticketed passenger in this seat, 1A. Here is my identification." She reached into her bag and produced her driver's license and her hospital ID. "Dr. Evelyn Hayes, Chief of Pediatric Cardiac Surgery at Emory." Officer Bryant took the IDs. He looked at them, then at her. He then looked at Officer Chen, who was standing by the galley, observing. Susan, seeing a potential crack in her authority, jumped in. "Officer, she's lying. She hasn't shown me a valid ticket. Her scanner pass is clearly fake, and she's agitating the other passengers. She's delaying an international flight." "That's not true," a voice piped up. Everyone turned. It was David, the young flight attendant. He was standing at the edge of the galley, trembling. "Susan, that's not true. I saw her scan her pass at the gate. The agent let her on. And she's not agitating anyone." You are. Susan's head snapped toward him. You are finished, she hissed. You're fired. You don't have the authority to fire me, Susan, David said, his voice shaking but growing stronger. Officer Bryant held up a hand. All right, that's enough. Ma'am, he said, back to Evelyn, I don't want to do this, but the airline has the right to refuse service. If the purser wants you off this plane, I have to ask you to come with us. On what grounds? Evelyn demanded. Because she feels like it? Because she doesn't like my face? Look at my ID. Look at my boarding pass. She held up her phone again. Scan it yourself. Call the gate agent. Her name was Maria. Do any due diligence before you escalate this. Ma'am, we're just trying to prevent a larger problem. I am the victim here, officer, Evelyn said, her voice rising, the cool facade finally cracking. I am being racially profiled and harassed by this employee, and you are asking me to leave? Absolutely not. Then we'll have to remove you, Officer Bryant said, his tone hardening. He unsnapped the keeper on his holster, not to draw his weapon, but as a clear, physical signal of authority. Evelyn's heart sank. This was it. She was going to be dragged off this plane. She would miss her flight. The surgery. Leo, she thought, for one fleeting, desperate second, I should just go. I'll get the next flight. This isn't worth it. But then she thought of every other time she had stayed silent, every time she had swallowed a small insult, every time she'd been overlooked or underestimated. No, not today. I am not moving, she said. That's your final word, Officer Bryant asked. That is my final word. He sighed. All right, Officer Chen, let's... Excuse me. The voice was not loud, but it cut through the cabin like a blade. It was a voice that held absolute, unquestioned authority. The curtain to the cockpit, which had been closed, was swept aside. Standing there, in the full, crisp white and black of his uniform, was Captain Marcus Hayes. The 4 gold stripes on his epaulets seemed to gleam. He was a tall man, his presence radiating a calm, powerful energy. He was also a fact that seemed to suck all the air from Susan Miller's lungs, a black man. He looked at the police officers. He looked at Susan, whose face had gone a chalky, ashen white. And then his eyes landed on Evelyn. His expression, which had been one of professional annoyance, melted for 1 second into pure, unfiltered shock. Evelyn? He said. What in God's name is going on? Silence. It was not a normal silence. It was a vacuum, a pressurized drop in cabin atmosphere where sound itself seemed to have died. Evelyn, who had been prepared for a physical confrontation, felt a wave of dizzying, complex relief. She looked at her husband, and for the first time let the mask of the unflappable surgeon fall. Her eyes welled with tears, a mixture of rage, humiliation, and the profound exhaustion of the fight. Marcus, she said, her voice thick. Thank God. Captain Marcus Hayes's gaze shifted from his wife to Susan. It was a slow, deliberate movement. He was not a man who ever raised his voice. He didn't need to. His authority was a physical weight, and he now directed that entire weight onto the senior purser. Susan, he said, his voice terrifyingly mild. Report. What is happening on my aircraft? Susan Miller was frozen. Her brain, which had been running on a script of righteous indignation, had blue-screened. She opened her mouth, but only a small, strangled squeak came out. She looked from Marcus to Evelyn, back to Marcus. The calculation was happening in real time. Hayes. Dr. Evelyn Hayes. Captain Marcus Hayes. Oh no. Oh God, no. Captain, she stammered, her hands visibly shaking. There was a ticket discrepancy. This passenger, she She what, Susan? Marcus asked, taking a step into the cabin. He looked at the two police officers. Officers, what are you doing on my plane? Officer Bryant, clearly recognizing the power dynamic had just inverted, stepped back. Captain, we were called by the purser. A report of a non-compliant passenger refusing to leave her seat. Refusing to leave her seat, Marcus repeated. He looked at Evelyn. Your seat is 1A, right? The one I booked for you with my own companion, Passes and Miles, 3 months ago? Yes, Evelyn whispered. Marcus nodded slowly. He looked back at Susan, whose face was now slick with a cold, panicked sweat. So let me get this straight, Marcus said, his voice still quiet, but now with a sharp, lethal edge. You saw my wife, Dr. Evelyn Hayes, sitting in her ticketed, confirmed, first-class seat, and you decided, what exactly, Susan? That she didn't belong? No, Captain, I didn't know, Susan cried, her voice suddenly high and desperate. I didn't know she was your wife. I swear, the manifest it's faulty. It was the worst possible thing she could have said. Marcus's eyes narrowed to slits. You didn't know she was my wife? He said. So that's the problem? If she were my wife, she'd be allowed to sit here? But as a black woman on her own, she's a non-compliant passenger. Is that what you're telling me? No, that's not what I mean. Susan was falling apart. Then what precisely do you mean, Susan? Marcus asked. He took another step, standing directly in front of her. Did you ask to see her boarding pass? Yes. And did she show it to you? Yes, but you didn't believe it. So you called security to have her removed. You delayed an international flight, my international flight, because you, a 28-year veteran of this airline, could not conceive of a black woman sitting in 1A. Mr. Henderson in 2B, who had been so impatient, was now trying to become invisible, staring intently at the safety card in his seat-back pocket. Chloe, in business class, was still recording. She had captured the entire glorious, horrific downfall, the captain's entrance, Susan's face crumbling, the whole thing. Marcus turned to the police officers. Officers, thank you for your time. You've been called here under false pretenses. The only person causing a disturbance on this flight is my own crew member. My wife is a passenger. She is a surgeon, and she is exactly where she is supposed to be. You can go. Officer Chen, who had been silent, nodded curtly. Understood, Captain. He looked at Susan with utter contempt. Have a good flight, sir. Ma'am. They turned and left. Now it was just Marcus, Evelyn, and Susan. Susan started to sob. Marcus. Captain, please, I've known you for 10 years. We fly together all the time. You know me. It was a mistake. A terrible mistake. A mistake, Marcus said. He looked around the cabin, at the other passengers, then at David, who was watching from the galley, and finally at Evelyn. You called her you people, Evelyn said, her voice now strong. You told me I was pulling the race card. That wasn't a mistake, Susan. That was your truth. Marcus's face, which had been a mask of cold fury, hardened into something else. It was the look of a judge passing sentence. Susan Miller, he said, you are a disgrace to your uniform. You are a liability. And you are, as of this second, relieved of your duties. What? Susan gasped. Marcus pulled out his own radio. This is Captain Hayes. I need the gate agent at F10 immediately, and I need a replacement senior purser for Flight 112. Purser Susan Miller is being removed from my aircraft, effective immediately. You can't! Susan shrieked. You can't do this! I'll go to the union. I'm suing! Get off my plane, Marcus said. He didn't shout. He didn't have to. The words landed like a gavel. You will be met at the gate by airline management and security. They will take your badge. Now, go. Susan looked at him, her eyes wild with hate and panic. She knew she was beaten, utterly and completely. With a final venomous glare at Evelyn, she grabbed her bag from the galley and stormed up the jet bridge, her sobs echoing in the enclosed space. The cabin was, once again, silent. Marcus took a deep breath. He turned to the other passengers. "Ladies and gentlemen, my deepest apologies for the delay. We had a staffing issue that has now been resolved. We will be underway as soon as her replacement arrives. Thank you for your patience." He then walked to 1A. He kneeled in the aisle next to his wife's seat. He took her hand, which was trembling. "Evelyn," he said, his voice now gentle. The captain gone. The husband returned. "Are you okay?" Evelyn nodded, wiping a tear from her cheek. "I am now. Go fly the plane, Marcus. I have a surgery to get to." He kissed her hand. "I love you. I'll see you in London." "I love you too," she replied. As he walked back to the cockpit, the entire first-class cabin, followed by the business cabin, erupted in spontaneous, thunderous applause. The flight was delayed by an hour and 40 minutes. A new purser, a kind-faced woman named Maria, had come on board, her eyes wide with the knowledge of what she was walking into. The gate agent had given her the 5-second summary. Susan went full racist. The passenger was the captain's wife. Just go. Maria was, in a word, horrified. She approached Evelyn with the kind of deference one would reserve for royalty. "Dr. Hayes," she said, her voice a soft murmur. "I am Maria, your purser for this flight. Can I get you anything at all? Champagne? A hot towel? Anything? Just some water, please, Maria." "Thank you," Evelyn said. She was too exhausted for champagne. The cabin door was finally closed. Marcus's voice came over the intercom, smooth and professional, announcing their flight time and apologizing once more for the delay. As the engine spooled up and the plane pushed back, Evelyn finally let her head rest against the seat. She closed her eyes, but sleep wouldn't come. Susan's words kept replaying in her mind. "You people." She had faced racism before, subtle cuts in the operating room, overt insults in medical school. But this was so public, so designed to strip her of her dignity, that it felt different. It had shaken her. Her hands, the hands that were scheduled to hold a child's heart in 24 hours, still had a faint tremor. She tried to focus. She pulled out the medical journal, opening it to the schematics of Leo's tiny, malformed aorta. She forced her mind into the work. Focus. Separate the right atrium. Cannulate. Begin bypass. Focus. About 3 hours over the Atlantic, the fasten seatbelt sign chimed on, not for turbulence, but for a different kind of emergency. Maria, the new purser, came rushing up the aisle from the economy cabin, her face pale. "Dr. Hayes," she said, her voice a high-pitched whisper. "I'm so sorry, but David said you were a doctor." Evelyn was instantly alert, the adrenaline of the operating room snapping her to attention. "Yes, I am. What's wrong?" "It's a passenger in 28C. I think he's having a heart attack. He's clutching his chest, he's sweating, he can't breathe." Evelyn was out of her seat before Maria finished the sentence. "Get me the aircraft's full medical kit. Now. And an oxygen tank." She hurried back, parting the curtain to the main cabin. Passengers stared as she moved with swift authority. In 28C, a man was slumped against the window. He was pale, gasping, and his skin had a clammy grey tinge. It was Mr. Henderson, the businessman from 2B, who had huffed in annoyance at her disturbance. Evelyn's brain didn't register the irony. It only registered the patient. "Sir, my name is Dr. Hayes. I'm a cardiac surgeon. Can you hear me?" Henderson's eyes fluttered open. He looked at her, his eyes wide with terror, and dimly, recognition. I chest hurts, he gasped. Arm numb. Classic MI symptoms, Evelyn said to herself. David and Maria arrived with the large red medical kit and the green oxygen tank. David, get this mask on him. Full flow, she commanded. She snapped on a pair of latex gloves and ripped open the blood pressure cuff. His pressure was skyrocketing, 190-110. She pulled the stethoscope from the kit and listened to his chest. His pulse is thready and irregular, she said. This is bad. She opened the kit, her eyes scanning the contents. I need aspirin. 4 baby aspirin. Now. Maria fumbled. Aspirin? Here, David said, producing the bottle. Good. Sir, chew these. Don't swallow. Chew. Henderson, gasping, did as he was told. We need to get this plane on the ground, Evelyn said, looking at Maria. How far are we from a diversion? Newfoundland? I'll notify the captain, Maria said, running for the phone. Evelyn worked. She didn't have the tools of her trade, no echo machine, no EKG. She was working blind, with just a stethoscope, a blood pressure cuff, and her hands. She administered a nitroglycerin tablet under his tongue from the kit. Mr. Henderson, she said, her voice calm and soothing, projecting an absolute control she didn't entirely feel. You are having a heart attack. I am going to do everything I can to keep you stable until we can land. Do you understand? He nodded, tears welling in his eyes. I'm so... He wheezed. I was an arse before. I'm sorry. Don't talk, Evelyn commanded, but her voice was gentle. Don't apologize. Just breathe. Stay with me, Mr. Henderson. That's all you have to do. For the next 45 minutes, Evelyn Hayes knelt in the aisle of a 777, 35,000 feet above the icy North Atlantic, holding the hand of a man who, just hours before, had wished for her to be thrown off the plane. She monitored his vitals, kept him conscious, and manually timed his irregular heartbeat, her fingers on his wrist, her mind a steel trap of calculations and protocols. Maria returned. The captain is diverting to St. John's, Newfoundland. We'll be on the ground in 30 minutes. He said to tell you. Hold on. Both of you. Evelyn nodded. Good. Good. When the plane finally touched down with a jolt, the paramedics were already on the tarmac, waiting. As they wheeled Mr. Henderson off, he refused to let go of Evelyn's hand. Thank you, he wept. Thank you, Doctor. You saved my life. You're welcome, Mr. Henderson, Evelyn said, squeezing his hand. Now go get that stent. As she walked back to her seat, exhausted, her knees aching, the entire plane, all 300 passengers, rose to their feet. A second, louder, more profound wave of applause followed her, all the way back to 1A. She had saved a life, and in doing so, had erased every last lingering doubt of who she was and where she belonged. The rest of the flight to London was delayed, of course, but no one complained. The diversion to St. John's had added another 3 hours, but the mood on the plane was one of subdued awe. Dr. Evelyn Hayes was a hero, twice over. When they finally landed at Heathrow, Evelyn was the last passenger to deplane. She was helping Maria and David fill out the medical incident reports. As she stepped into the terminal, a young woman hurried to catch up with her. It was Chloe, the passenger from business class who had been recording. Dr. Hayes, Chloe said, her phone in her hand. My name is Chloe. Chloe Jenkins. I'm a vlogger, a small one. But I saw what that woman did to you, back in Atlanta, and I recorded it, all of it. Evelyn stopped. You recorded it? Yes, Chloe said, her face earnest. The whole thing, her calling you people, her calling security, and then your husband, the captain. Oh my God, that was epic. I haven't posted it. I wouldn't. Not without your permission, but people should know. Summit Airlines should have to answer for this. For Susan. Evelyn thought for a long moment. Her first instinct was privacy. She was a surgeon, not a spectacle. But then she thought of Susan. She thought of the 28 years Susan had likely been doing this in smaller, less obvious ways to other passengers. She thought about how Susan had tried to use the system, the police, the airline regulations, as a weapon against her. A weaponized system, Evelyn knew, could only be beaten by unassailable truth. "Post it," Evelyn said, her voice firm. "Post all of it." Chloe's eyes widened. "Are you sure?" "Yes. Tag Summit Airlines. Tag the Atlanta News. Tag everyone. People like Susan. They only thrive in the dark. It's time to turn on the lights." "I will," Chloe said, her fingers already flying on her phone. "Thank you, Dr. Hayes. And what you did for that man. You're amazing." "I'm just doing my job," Evelyn said. "Have a good evening, Chloe." Marcus was waiting for her just outside customs, his hat tucked under his arm. He looked exhausted, but his eyes lit up when he saw her. He didn't say anything. He just wrapped her in his arms and held her for a full minute. "It's over," he murmured into her hair. "It's done." "Not yet," she said. "But it will be soon." By the time they got to their hotel in Mayfair, Chloe's video had been live on TikTok, Twitter, X, and YouTube for 2 hours. It had already been viewed collectively over 15 million times. The title was simple and devastating. Karen flight attendant, racially profiles surgeon, calls cops, gets fired on the spot by her captain husband. It was, by any measure, a nuclear bomb. The video was brutal. It showed Susan's sneering face. It captured her voice, dripping with disdain. It had crystal-clear audio of, "You people are always so quick to pull that card." And then, the finale, the hero's entrance. Captain Marcus Hayes, his voice like ice, dismantling Susan's entire career in 60 seconds. The internet, a beast that rarely agrees on anything, came to a unified, roaring consensus. Susan Miller was a villain. Dr. Evelyn and Captain Marcus Hayes were icons. Summit Airlines' social media accounts were a dumpster fire. By 6 a.m. London time, their stock, NYSE SA, was in pre-market freefall, dropping 11%. The CEO of Summit Airlines, a man named James Powell, was in an emergency PR meeting before the sun was even up in New York. "Fix this," he was shouting. "Fix this now." But you can't fix a video that perfect. They released a statement. "Summit Airlines has a zero-tolerance policy for discrimination of any kind. We are appalled by the behavior seen in the video. The employee in question has been terminated, pending a full investigation. We are reaching out to Dr. Hayes to apologize." The apology, when it came, was a panicked call from Powell himself to Evelyn's hotel room. He offered millions of airline miles, a massive donation to a hospital in her name, and a personal, groveling apology. Evelyn was polite. "Mr. Powell, I appreciate your call, but what I want is not miles. I want to know what you are doing, tangibly, today, to ensure that what happened to me never, ever happens to another passenger of color on one of your planes. I want to see your new training protocols. I want to see your new zero-tolerance policy in action." Powell, realizing this was not a woman who could be bought, stammered, "Yes, of course. Anything." Evelyn, meanwhile, had work to do. She left the media firestorm to Marcus and the airline's PR team, went to Great Ormond Street Hospital, scrubbed in, and for 9 straight hours, she stood over 8-year-old Leo. She meticulously, brilliantly, repaired his heart. The surgery was a flawless success. The story of Summit Airlines Flight 112 didn't end when the plane touched down at Heathrow. For the people involved, it was a beginning. It was the start of a public firestorm, a private reckoning, and a final, inescapable landing into the reality they had each created. For Dr. Evelyn and Captain Marcus Hayes, the landing was just the start of a new, strange turbulence. As they sat in their hotel room in Mayfair, finally alone, Marcus holding his wife's hands, the hands that had been steady for a stranger but were trembling now, Evelyn's phone began to vibrate on the nightstand. It didn't just vibrate, it seemed to scream. Chloe Jenkins, the vlogger, had kept her word. The video, titled "Karen Flight Attendant, Racially Profiles Surgeon, Calls Cops, Gets Fired on the Spot by Her Captain Husband," was not just viral. It was a pandemic. Before they had even cleared customs, it had hit 1 million views. By the time they ordered room service, it was at 15 million. News outlets in the UK and the US, CNN, BBC, Fox News, MSNBC, were playing the clip. They bypassed their usual ideological divides, united in a rare, singular moment of collective outrage. The video was that damning. There was no ambiguity, no other side to Susan's sneer, to her words. You people. The first official call came at 3 a.m. London time. It was James Powell, the CEO of Summit Airlines, his voice thick with panic and the artificial energy of a man who had been dragged from his bed. "Dr. Hayes, Mr. Powell, My God, I have seen the video. I am appalled. I am sickened. This is not who we are." Evelyn, sitting on the edge of the bed with Marcus listening on speaker, was calm. "Mr. Powell, with all due respect, it is exactly who you are. It's who you have been for 28 years. Susan Miller was not a rookie. She was a senior purser. She was your brand. She felt empowered by her uniform to do what she did. The only anomaly is that she was caught." "No, I assure you," Powell stammered. "This is an isolated—" "She is terminated, Dr. Hayes. Terminated for cause. Her career is over. We're releasing a public statement. But what can we do for you? For you and your husband? Please. A donation in your name to any charity you choose. First-class travel for life, of course. Whatever you want." Marcus spoke then, his voice the same steel-edged calm he'd used on the flight deck. "Mr. Powell, my wife isn't a contestant on a game show. This isn't a prize package. She was humiliated. She was accused of a crime. She was threatened by law enforcement, all while on her way to save a child's life. You don't fix that with miles." "Then what?" Powell pleaded. "You're going to fix your company," Evelyn said, her voice leaving no room for negotiation. "I want a full-scale, independent audit of your in-flight service and its disciplinary records, specifically regarding passenger complaints of racial bias. I want to see the new training protocols you implement, and I want to review them. This isn't about me, Mr. Powell. It's about the next Dr. Hayes, the next black passenger who just wants to sit in the seat they paid for." There was a stunned silence. Powell, a man who negotiated billion-dollar fuel contracts, knew he was beaten. "Yes, doctor, of course. Anything." Evelyn, meanwhile, had a more pressing engagement. She left the media storm to Marcus and the Summit Airlines PR team. She went to Great Ormond Street Hospital. She scrubbed in, and for 9 grueling, meticulous hours, she stood over 8-year-old Leo, his tiny chest open, and she repaired his heart. The surgery was a flawless, textbook success. When she walked out of the OR, exhausted but triumphant, the lead London surgeon, a man named Dr. Alistair Finch, was waiting. He simply started to clap. The entire ICU staff, who had all seen the video, joined in. She had become a legend, not just for her hands, but for her courage. The story also had a new chapter for Mr. Henderson. He woke up in a sterile white room in St. John's, Newfoundland. The beeping of the monitor was the first thing he heard. The second was the voice of a nurse. "Well, look who's back. You gave us a scare, Mr. Henderson. You're a very, very lucky man." What happened?" he rasped. "You had a severe myocardial infarction over the Atlantic. The plane diverted. You're lucky there was a doctor on board. She kept you stable for 45 minutes. Saved your life," the EMTs said. "A cardiac surgeon of all things. Talk about good luck." "A doctor," Henderson said, the memory coming back in flashes. The pain, the terror, the calm, authoritative face of the woman he had dismissed. "Dr. Hayes. Was her name Dr. Hayes?" "That's the one," the nurse said, checking his chart. The shame that washed over him was more painful than the ache in his chest. He, who had huffed and groaned and wished for her to be removed, owed his life to her. He fumbled for the TV remote. He needed to see the news, to see if the flight had... His thumb hit the power button, and there it was. His flight. His face, briefly seen in the background. And there she was, Dr. Evelyn Hayes. He was just in time to hear the tail end of Chloe's video, his own voice, tinny and impatient. "Oh, for God's sake, here we go. Just move to another seat." He had been part of the chorus that sought to humiliate her, and she had saved him anyway. Mr. Henderson wept. They were not tears of pain, but of a profound, shattering penance. He grabbed his phone. He called his personal banker. "Paul," he said, his voice hoarse, "I need you to find every piece of information you can on a Dr. Evelyn Hayes, cardiac surgeon at Emory. And I need you to find out if she has a charity, a research fund, anything. I'm making a donation, a large one, 7 figures, and I need to send a note." His note, which arrived at the hospital a week later, with the confirmation of a $2,000 donation to the hospital's pediatric cardiac wing, was simple. "You taught me more in 30 minutes than I've learned in 50 years. Thank you for saving me in more ways than one." That donation, combined with the public outpouring of support, gave Evelyn and Marcus an idea. They incorporated Wings and Hearts, a foundation dedicated to funding and flying children from underserved countries to the US for complex, life-saving surgeries. The trauma had been forged into a purpose. For David, the young flight attendant, the landing was terrifying. He was immediately summoned to Summit HQ in Atlanta for a full debrief. He walked in assuming he was being fired for insubordination. He sat across from Robert Vance, the VP of In-Flight Operations, and 2 grim-faced lawyers from HR. "Tell us what you saw, Mr. Chen," Vance said. David, his voice shaking, told the truth. He told them about Susan's snide comments, her immediate escalation, her lies to the police, and her hiss, "You're finished?" Vance nodded slowly, then slid a tablet across the table. "You're already trending, Mr. Chen." The flight attendant who spoke up. "The video backs your account 100%. Susan Miller's termination is final, and your promotion to purser is effective immediately." David was stunned. Thank you, sir." "Don't thank me," Vance said, leaning forward. "We're gutting our entire sensitivity training protocol. It's useless. We want you to help us build the new one. The David Chen Protocol, we're calling it. We want you to be the face of it. We need people to see that speaking up is not just allowed, it's required." David, who had just been trying to do the right thing, suddenly became the moral compass for an entire airline. And then there was Susan. Her story did not end with the applause for Evelyn. Her landing was a crash, slow and total. When she stormed off the jet bridge, She was met not by a sympathetic colleague, but by Robert Vance himself, flanked by 2 armed airport security officers. "Susan Miller," Vance said, his voice dead. "My office. Now." She was marched through the terminal, her face a mask of thunderous rage. "This is ridiculous. That captain is abusing his power. I am a 28-year veteran. I am filing the biggest grievance." "Be quiet, Susan," Vance snapped, and she was so shocked by his tone that she actually obeyed. In a cold, windowless office, Vance didn't waste time. "Hand over your airline ID and your crew badge. You are terminated, for cause, effective immediately." "You can't!" she shrieked. "I have a union. You haven't even heard my side." "I don't need to," Vance said. He turned a monitor on his desk. It was Chloe's video. He pressed play. He made her watch the whole thing. He watched her face as her own voice. "You people," echoed in the tiny room. Her face, so full of righteous fury, deflated. The color drained from it. "You've violated conduct codes 413B, 22C, and 40A, Vance read from a sheet, his voice bored. "Passenger discrimination, harassment, filing a false report to law enforcement, and willful endangerment of an on-time departure. Your for-cause termination means you forfeit all unvested pension benefits and your separation package. You have 10 minutes to clean out your locker. Security will escort you to your car. If you ever set foot on Summit Airlines property again, you will be arrested for trespassing." She was crushed. But hate is a resilient thing. Her next stop was her union rep, a woman named Brenda. "We sue them," Susan demanded, pacing the union office. "Wrongful termination, hostile work environment. Marcus Hayes used his position as captain to protect his wife. It's nepotism." Brenda, a woman who had seen it all, held up a hand. "Susan, sit down. I've been your rep for 15 years. I've defended you on, let's see, 14 other rudeness complaints, all of which we got dismissed as he said, she said." "See?" Susan said, pointing. "I'm a good employee." "No," Brenda said, her voice tired. "You were a lucky employee. This time there's a 4K video with 50 million views. You called a passenger, you people. You lied about her ticket. You called the cops on her for sitting. I can't defend that. The union will not defend that. You're a pariah, Susan. You made every flight attendant in the world look like a racist monster. We're not touching this. You're on your own." The word alone became Susan's new reality. She tried to hire a lawyer. The first one, a Billboard-famous wrongful termination shark named Gary Klein, lit up when he heard Big Airline. Then he watched the video. He clicked pause, loosened his tie, and said, "Ms. Miller, I'm afraid I can't take your case. My consultation fee is $500, payable now." The second lawyer just laughed at her. She was blacklisted. No other airline would touch her. Delta, American, United. Her applications vanished into a digital void. She was toxic. Her former friends, the pilots she'd flirted with, and the pursers she'd gossiped with, suddenly didn't answer her texts. She saw a co-worker in a grocery store, and the woman, seeing Susan, physically turned her cart and fled down another aisle. Her 28 years of seniority were gone. Her pension was gone. Her flight benefits were gone. The money stopped. First went the savings, then went the car, repossessed in the dead of night. Then went the apartment in College Park, the one she'd complained about, the one she now desperately missed. An eviction notice, pink and humiliating, was taped to her door. She ended up in a weekly rate motel off the interstate, a place that smelled of stale cigarettes and despair. She had to find a job, any job. She applied at Starbucks. The manager, a 24-year-old with purple hair, recognized her. "I don't think you're the right fit for us." She applied at Target. She applied at a call center. Nothing. She was unemployable. Finally, 6 months after Flight 112, she found a job, a place that didn't do background checks and paid cash under the table, desperate for anyone who would show up. She was back at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. Not in the sky, not in the glamorous crew lounge, but in the food court. First Officer Mike Sullivan, Marcus's co-pilot from that very flight, was on a layover, grabbing a coffee before his flight to Rome. He saw her. He almost didn't recognize her. Her blonde hair, no longer in a severe, polished bun, was thin and greasy, stuffed under a Sparrow paper hat. Her uniform was a red polyester polo stained with tomato sauce. She was wiping down a table, her movements slow, her eyes as dead as a cloudy sky. He watched, mesmerized by the sheer, biblical totality of her fall. A group of teenagers, laughing and running, spilled a large orange Fanta all over the floor. "Susan!" A 22-year-old manager named Kyle barked from behind the counter. "Clean up! Aisle 4! Now!" Susan, the woman who once held the power to call federal officers on a surgeon, flinched like a beaten dog. She shuffled to the back, grabbed a mop and a wet floor sign. As she began to sluggishly push the sticky liquid around, her eyes drifted to the TVs in the TGI Fridays next door. A familiar face smiled back at her. It was Dr. Evelyn Hayes. She was sitting on a sofa with her husband, both of them impeccably dressed, being interviewed. The chyron read, "Wings and Hearts, the couple that turned hate into hope." "And so this new donation from Mr. Henderson," the host was saying, "the very man you saved on that flight, has allowed your foundation to open a new chapter?" "Yes," Evelyn said, her voice radiating a warmth and confidence Susan had never possessed. "We believe everyone belongs, and everyone deserves a chance to fly. Whether it's in a first-class seat or on a medical transport jet to get the surgery that will save their life." Susan stood frozen, the mop handle in her hand. She could hear the applause from the studio audience. She could see the look of adoration Marcus was giving his wife. "Susan, are you deaf?" her manager shouted, his voice cracking with teenage impatience. "Mop the floor. You're not paid to watch TV." She bent her back, her knees cracking, and began to clean up the mess. She was grounded, forever, in the very terminal she used to rule, forced to watch the woman she tried to destroy soar to heights she could never, ever reach. The landing was complete. Karma, she learned, didn't just have a long memory. It had a perfect, brutal, and inescapable flight plan. And that's the story of Susan Miller. It's a powerful, real-life lesson that the prejudices you carry can become the very baggage that weighs you down. Susan thought her uniform gave her power, but she confused authority with arrogance. She tried to knock Dr. Evelyn Hayes down, but all she did was reveal her own moral bankruptcy and provide the platform for a true hero to rise. Karma in this story wasn't just a twist of fate, it was a direct consequence. Susan's hatred grounded her, literally. What do you think? Was this the ending she deserved? We tell these stories because they need to be heard. If you believe that grace and integrity will always win, hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to see that what goes around truly does come around. And please subscribe to the channel for more true stories of karma, justice, and the incredible human spirit. Thank you for listening.